Dungeon Minister merchandise? Just in time for the holidays, you say? Probably not. Unless you're Greek Orthodox. Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to the Dungeon Minister! Alright, so, this just keeps the glare down. I can't see anything, but it at least reduces the glare from the lights. Our heroes have spent the night in the treasure room that had been guarded by the living bronze statue, the statue that belched forth fire at them. And they've spent the night there because it's the most secure they can find. They're a little worried about those geckos, they're a little worried about the water weird, and they're a lot worried that they haven't found the werewolves. They were supposed to find a werewolf's den. That's what Garrek gave them information about. And they haven't. So, with these concerns, they spent the night in the treasure room, barricaded in. I did roll for wandering monsters during the night, but I don't know what would have happened. Like, that they would have gone knocking on the door. There were ghouls in this area of the dungeon, and, you know, nobody wants school trouble. So, no monsters are going to come down here. Anyway, I thought, well, if I get something, maybe some giant centipedes have gotten in through some cracks or something, right? But I didn't come up with anything anyway, so didn't matter. In the morning, Bob, Johnny, and Fleetwood both memorize their usual list of spells. For Fleetwood, this is Sleep, Light, Web, and Wizard Lock. Bob Johnny memorizes Magic Missile, Charm Person over the strenuous objections of Touchberry, who really hates it when there's a charmed monster. Anyway, Web and Knock. Not able to actually see the sun, but judging by Touchberry's growling stomach, they figure it's probably time for breakfast. They eat and leave the treasure room. Back out into the room with the two sarcophagi. These would be the sarcophagi for the high priest and high priestess of the religion in this area, and then out into the room with all of the strange writing all over the walls. There is a history here. There's something. At any rate, they continue to the well room. Now, in this room, you may recall, there had been a green slime that was sort of a trap. I put some pyrite in the well, and the characters, if they decided to gather that up, discovering later that it wasn't really gold, they would be focused on that and step into the green slime, or at least they'd have a high chance of stepping into the slime. I'd let them roll for it to see if they stumbled into it. But they didn't. They didn't bother with the coins. They saw the slime and defeated it. Now, passing the well a second time, Touchberry can't help himself. He goes for it. Bob, Johnny as well. They want to collect up the treasure. Right? So they begin pulling it out of the water, and that's when I reveal to them, you're holding the coins, but they don't look right. They don't look like real money. There's something about it that's just, oh, wait. It's fool's gold. Ah, gotcha. Anyway, they got plenty of treasure. Don't feel bad for them. So, on they go. They enter now what I call the kind of hub room, off of which is the gecko's lair. And so, as they move toward it, they know they're heading for potential trouble. I roll, and indeed, as they come into the room, a gecko is emerging from their lair on its way out the door, right? Now, from the gecko's perspective, someone invaded their lair, one of them dropped on top of one of these invaders, and then everyone took a nap for some reason, because Fleetwood cast Sleep yesterday. Well, history's about to repeat itself, because Fleetwood casts Sleep as soon as he sees this gecko coming out, and I roll a monster reaction, and it's going to attack. So it clearly starts to come across the room toward them. Sleep. Down it goes. The area of effect that Fleetwood cast in is all in front of him, and it's a large area, which means that not only does he sleep that gecko, he sleeps the one that had been hanging from the ceiling. You'll remember as they went in, that gecko dropped, right? yesterday in the last episode. As they went in, a gecko dropped on him. Well, they always leave a guard up there. They always, having the ability to stick to the ceiling, they always leave a guard there, and, down this thing falls from the ceiling. It wakes up when it lands, because you would, right? You fall asleep, if you fall 10 feet, you're going to wake up. It wakes up, but it's still groggy. The one out in the hub room is asleep, and so they slip into the statue room where the floor has collapsed and the water weird dwells in the puddle, the pool underneath. Now, I was fully prepared to let them just bolt through, run through. The weird won't have time to detect them because they have to hit the surface of the water to alert it. That's just something I decided. I have no idea what the creators intended when they put that creature in whatever module it was in to begin with. So they could have just bolted through, and by the time it would have woken up to the fact that someone was there, they would have rushed through on the part where the floor hadn't collapsed. They would have rushed through and been out the dungeon. But they decide to be double sure, and Torchberry decides to come out to play. Could I pour oil all over the water and then light it on fire? Okay. You really don't need to, but okay, sure, why not? So he does. He uncorks it, stands up on the plinth of the statue, because that's over the water, pours it in, and throws a torch on it. Foop! Okay, great. It's starting to float as it burns. It's starting to float toward the stairs. Ooh, gosh, we gotta get out of here! All right, so they rush out the door, and just as the flames are beginning to lick at Faux-Fire, she was the last in line as they head out. Touchberry's taking this whole new persona very seriously. Out they go. Now, they decide that clearly this wasn't the cave Garrek meant. I remind them that he had said it was hidden, and this wasn't at all hidden. So they think, well, either he's lying or we just got the wrong cave. As a side note, my idea for this area, there's this curved lake with the curve of hills that goes around it. Hills that I don't remember putting in my map. There may have been a point where this would have been wooded hills, and then I replaced it with just thick woods, and then I just missed 3 hexes in a line. But I like it, little curve like that. And I've decided that the people in the area liked it too, and it was a center of deep religious significance. The lake was considered sacred, and this line of hills is riddled with caves and tombs and temples and all sorts of things. Perfect ground for adventuring. If they ever say, I just want to do a dungeon, can we just do a dungeon? I'll point them in this direction. There will be gobs of stuff for them to explore. I can put all sorts of stuff in here. But the connecting thread is that all of them have this sort of water worship. Their worship centers around the water and this lake, setting up the potential for some big bad of a mid-level big bad, not the huge bad guys in my world, but a mid-level big bad who's not connected to the rest of the story to live in that lake. Anyway, knowing that they haven't found Ivalio's caves, they want to search for them. They are pretty sure Ivalio is there right now. I don't know why they think this. Garrek has been gone from the werewolves for a long time. He'd been a captive of the kobolds for some time. He's been in Honeywood for a while. He doesn't have any current knowledge. I don't know why they think Ivalio is here, but they want to find the werewolves' hideout. Great. Let's keep looking. And so they go up the line of the lake, and they're zigzagging. I say, how are you going to search? They say, well, if it's hidden. If he's right that it's hidden, we're going to have to really cover everything. So they zigzag up and down the hill as they go northward along the shore of the lake. They go up and down the hill, next to the lake. Great. That way they do find it. What they find is a point where there's a large rock on the side of the hill. Large rock on the side of the hill that provides a screen from below. It can't be seen at all for the entrance to the cave. They, however, find it, and in they go. This first entrance is a circular room. This is another through line for these cave systems. Lots of circular rooms because, well, the one-page dungeon generator that I'm using by Watabo, I don't know how to say it, this guy, at any rate, great site. He's got all sorts of resources. The dungeon generator he has an option for round rooms, and I kind of liked it, and so I made some round dungeon tiles, so I'm going to use them. Anyway, it's a round room, empty, As they enter, it looks empty except for leaf litter that's been blown in, a lot of detritus that is gathered in here. There does seem to be a path through the middle of it, though. This does seem to have been used at some point. As they enter, from that leaf litter and rubble in the room, they hear some sounds, some scraping, some shuffling, and then toads! Okay, so giant toads probably aren't the scariest thing ever, but it is a monster that makes sense to have found an open cave and just moved in. In fact, they've recently moved in. There's no proper nest made yet. They haven't, gotten dug in or anything. The toads see invaders to their home, and so they attack. Roll for initiative. Well, the toads get it. They jump out and attack. Chomp, chomp. And the fight is on. It's not a huge one, although it ends up giving Bob Johnny fits for some reason. He can't hit. His dice are not cooperating. He rolls, he rolled, no, not happening. Just not happening. So the others are pretty much carrying the fight. At one point, Foefire's backed into, well, it's not a corner because it's a round room, but she's backed up against the wall, and she's just too close to use her bow. And so she's kicking at the thing, just trying to get it away from her. And here's, again, this thing, they don't want to kill animals, even giant animals. I will note, Bob Johnny does not think to use his ring of animal control. Memory of a 7-year-old. At any rate, eventually, though, the battle does turn against the toads, inevitably. They're just meant to be a warm-up monster. And that I roll a morale check, and I said the toad clearly wants to get away. He hops away from you, but the doorway's blocked at that point, so this big toad's hopping further in. And so they say, okay, we're going to clear the space and let him hop out. He hops out, and seeing her mate go, I roll for the female, and she decides she's going to leave as well. And yes, I did just go to the toy box and get a couple of frogs and I said, those aren't frogs, they're toads. Because I'm not going to pay $10 per toad to have giant toads on the board, officially licensed giant toads, when I've got gobs of rubber frogs in the house. Anyway, out the toads go, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Everybody is a bit banged up by that. No one came out of it unharmed, but mostly they're okay. It's not too bad. They look to the door. So the first thing they think is, okay, check for traps. And so Foefire checks for traps. She actually succeeds, so if there had been traps, she would have found it. There's no traps. Okay, Foefire, can you pick the lock? We'll save Bob Johnny's knock spell for later. Can you pick the lock, Foefire? No, there's no keyhole. There's nothing. The hinges are clearly on the inside. There's no way to pick this from outside. There's a lever kind of handle of iron, but there's no keyhole. Oh, okay. Well, Bob Johnny, you're up. He casts the knock spell, and there's that dull knocking sound, softly knocking in the door, and there's a click. They try it, and it opens. In they go. Now, in the last episode, people noted the sort of Indiana Jones type traps that I had set. You're going to love this one. As they go down the hallway, first of all, they send Foefire ahead to check for traps, because they experienced traps in the other dungeon, and they're getting the idea that Papa's on a trap jag here. So they send Foefire ahead, and she says, I'm not finding any traps in this first section of corridor. I'm not finding anything except, look, written on the floor every few feet are the words, the penitent shall pass. Stolen directly from Indiana Jones. Now, Mama knows this movie. She knows what it comes from, and I've already told her there's going to be something. You're going to recognize it. Don't tell them. Let them see if they can solve the puzzle, all right? The penitent. Penitent shall pass. And, of course, well, what's penitent? It means to repent. It's like in church when we have the general confession. Okay, well, what does it mean? And I said, well, what do we do when we do the general confession? What do we do? We kneel down. Everyone drops, right? And they start to crawl the rest of the dungeon. Being a priest's kid has its advantages. So they're crawling along, and Foefire is still looking for traps, and by gum, she finds one. There's a stone here that doesn't match. It doesn't fit. And there's no grout around it. There's no mortar around it. I think this moves. Let's look. And so she investigates the area and finds on the wall, about waist height for a human, there's a line of grout missing between courses of stones. There's a whole line of it that goes about 5 feet, just gap. Why would there be on each side? That's suspicious. And so they see where that is, and they see where the stone is. And I say there's a few inches on each side that the stone doesn't reach. So we can get around without stepping on it? Oh yeah, no problem. All right. And so they scoot around. Except Touchberry, who says, how high is that slit in the wall? I say, well, you go over a little close to it, and it's about there on you. It's about there on you. Okay. If I kneel, the slit is above me? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go across the stone kneeling. Alrighty then. And so he shuffles on his knees, and my middle guy is doing this in our kitchen, shuffling back and forth. And he shuffles forward, and I say, as your knees touch the stone, you feel it shift under you, and you hear a slicing sound as above you 2 blades swing out of the walls, just at what would have been your head height. Swooshing above you, they snap and return to the wall. Okay. I want to do that again. So he goes back and does it again, and they shoot out again. This trap does reset itself. It uses the sort of spring mechanism and maybe weights in the wall. I don't care how it works. I don't have to know. Anyway, it resets itself. And so he can set it off all once. He does. He goes back and forth, setting off this trap, while his companions just sort of watch. You coming, Touchberry? All right. One more time, and then we got to go. So they finish with that and continue down the passage, still looking for traps because they figure this is what Papa's going to do. He's going to leave one trap, and then when we think, oh, well, we're fine now, there'll be another. There isn't. Well, sort of. They enter a room 30 by 30 with a well in the middle of it. I did mention that water was important to the culture that built these caves and tombs, right? Okay, so there's this fountain in the middle of the room. And I say at first it looks perfectly ordinary, although the device from which the water flows is kind of creepy. It's this big pillar on top of which sit 2 huge stone creatures with wings and hideous faces. Gargoyles. Well, not every gargoyle is hideous. No, you're cute. You're adorable. Really. Everyone thinks so. Okay. Anyway, these ones are hideous. And I say you have just time to register that there's something weird about the fountain, but you don't get what, when, and my boys finish my sentence. The gargoyles jump down, don't they? Of course, they're living gargoyles. They're monster gargoyles. So the attack is on. Swooping in, crashing in, these huge creatures attack. Now, one of them jumps off first. The other stands and spreads its wings, and in that moment, Fofire gets off a shot and hits it up there. The first one has plowed into Bob Johnny, I think it is, plowed into him with the horn on the top of his head, and, the combat starts. This ends up really being pretty tough. I mean, gargoyles are nothing to sneeze at, and they can only be hit by magic weapons. Now, fortunately, everyone has a magic weapon. Fofire's bow is magic, so anything she shoots from it has that, it can get through that sort of, barrier. But it is an indication of how tough the monster is, and so it's not an easy fight. Eventually, though, they do crumble into pieces. The party is really banged up, though. And I say, all right, you catch your breath, and you have a chance to look around. What do you want to do? Well, let's look at this fountain. Well, the column that emerges, on which the gargoyles were sitting, it is actually topped with a little statue, which you couldn't see because the gargoyles were in its place. There's a statue of a man up there, and he's holding a broken spear in his hand. And he's gesturing with his other hand down toward the pool. And you see writing around the base. And it is in all sorts of different alphabets, different languages, some of which you recognize as the same alphabet that was used over in the Ghoul tombs, right? But there's other alphabets. One you could swear is the Dwarven alphabet. One looks like it might be an ancient Elvish script. And so you look at that one, and you recognize the lettering, and you can make out a word, if it would be. I mean, you don't recognize the word, but you can see that it is a word. Borvo. Borvo. Okay. That's not a word they recognize. I wonder if that's the name of the fellow in the statue. All right. So they're examining this, and I say, well, you notice something else as you look at it. At first, it really didn't occur to you. You didn't see it right away. But then you notice the water as it flows from this column down into the pool. But it doesn't. The water isn't flowing out of spouts and falling into the pool. The water is rather gathering from the pool and leaping up in spouts into the column. What? It's flowing backward. Oh, that is weird. Stay away from that. That is weird. I don't want anything to do with that. This is Fleetwood, my most cautious player. Meanwhile, Bob Johnny says, I want to go sit where the gargoyles were. Why do you want to sit where the gargoyle... Okay. This is actually good, because I wanted him to discover this. Okay, you get into the pool of the fountain and start clambering up the column. The water, of course, is around your ankles, and it begins splashing down over you. And as it does, you feel something. You begin to feel the sore places where the gargoyles and the toads had attacked you. You begin to feel them warm and tingling. You look down, and wounds that you have begin to seal up. You're healing. Take back 1 point of healing. Cool! Everyone in! The water's fine! So they all jump into the pool, and they start healing. This fountain regenerates 1 hit point per turn, up to 15. So this is a serious healing pool here, because I have some serious bad guys coming up. This is a serious healing pool. Now, it heals up to 15 hit points. Nobody there at that point was lower than 15. Touchberry had used his sword on Bob Johnny, so now Bob Johnny was sort of in the upper teens, and so with a max of 32, he got up to his max very easily. Great! That's fabulous! All right, so everyone is now at their max. They're sitting in this pool, enjoying the water. This is great. We could come here anytime. I wonder if we take the water away, if it'll still work. It won't. But that's what they're talking about when, boom! The door to the north, which they had barely noticed. So fixed were they on the gargoyles and on the fountain, although I did put it down in the dungeon tiles. I did put the door in. They really hadn't thought about it too much. Boom! It flies open, and in burst 2 werewolves. Because this is what I have, there's a small werewolf and a big werewolf. Those are the minis I've got. So in they come, and they attack. The first thought is, we'll stay in the pool. They can hurt us, but we'll just get healed again. And I say, well, yeah, but if they take away, 6 hit points and you only get 1 back that round, eventually, okay, true, let's fight, right? The combat here, the big guy stays on Fleetwood and Bob Johnny. The little guy circles around to get faux fire and starts, he's still a werewolf. He circles around to get faux fire, and they're actually standing in the pool trying to fight to stay in the water, right? Eventually they say, no, we got to get out because there's not enough maneuverability. I'm saying you get hit, and then he draws back, and you can't do anything. You can't reach him, right? So they have to get out of the pool to fight. Faux Fire takes a silver dagger out because it's at too close of quarters for a bow. So she gets her silver dagger out. And they begin the fight. It's going badly with the big guy. He has a lot of hit points. I did not roll him up as a normal werewolf. He is a leader among werewolves. He's got 32 hit points, I think it was. So he's pretty tough. And he's going at them with a sword, which is a magic sword +1. They don't know this, but it is. And so they're not doing too well. The other guy is a lot easier. He's weaker, and they're just better dice rolls. They get him pretty far down to the point where I think it's time to roll morale. Oh yeah, he's running. He's running. He boots it out the way that they came, toward the trap. Touchberry says, I want to follow him, and runs after him because he wants to see him get, caught in the trap. But this is the werewolf's lair. They have discovered that trap already, and he vaults over it, right? Well, that'll probably require a dex check, right? All right, I'll do a dex check. Well, what's his dexterity? He's a werewolf, so I'm giving him a dexterity of 18 because, they're really, really, agile and powerful. Great. Dexterity of 18. What is he? Oh, I rolled 20. So the werewolf tries to vault over the pressure plate, but lands on the very edge of it and triggers the trap. All right, he still gets a saving throw. Oh, well, he makes it. So as the trap springs, he does a tuck and roll, and the blades miss him, and he continues off down the passage. Well, Touchberry's not letting him go. He does his own tuck and roll, rolls over the pressure plate, which has not even reset yet and springs back out, rolls over the pressure plate and is after him. The werewolf gets slowed down by the door. Remember the door between the toads and this hall. That door swinged. It closed. It closed behind them, and so he gets to the door and he's grabbing at the handle and trying to pull it open. You know how it is when you're in a rush, the door. And it's just enough. Touchberry catches him. And as the werewolf gets the door open and runs through, Touchberry runs him through. And the werewolf dies. He'd only had 4 hit points left, right? Werewolf dead. And the door closes behind Touchberry. Okay. Meanwhile, Bob, Johnny, and Fleetwood both cast Web on the big guy. They have had enough of fighting this guy. They cast web on him. It ensnares him, grabs onto the wall, the ceiling, the floor, everything, and he is stuck. Now, he's pretty big, so it's not going to take him a huge long time to break out of this, but there's 2 webs. So they have some time to talk, what are we going to do with him? Well, we could just kill him. Let's just kill him, right? This is Bob Johnny talking. Let's just kill him. We've got him. Let's kill him. Well, no, I want to find out information. Is this Ivalio? They don't recognize this wolf, right? They've seen Ivalio in werewolf form. This doesn't look like him. And I don't know. I don't want to kill him. I want information from him. Bob Johnny's arguing for killing him. Fleetwood and Fofire are saying no. Touchberry's out in the foyer. So they're having this argument, really. When finally they do convince Bob Johnny to use the wand that they found way, way, way back at Bargle's tower. The wand they found with chains wrapped around, carved chains wrapped around the handle, which they assume is a wand of hold person. It is. So all right, he uses the wand. There's a saving throw, and he makes it, right? So now instead of 5 charges, it's down to 4. At any rate, he makes his saving throw, and Bob Johnny says, see, we should just kill him. So they do. They kill him. Meanwhile, where is Touchberry? So Fofire trots after him, goes around the trap, right, and opens the door and finds Touchberry, fuming next to the body of a human, a ragged, rangy-looking individual. His clothes aren't awful or anything, but they're clearly not washed very often. He doesn't take great care of himself. He's a bit of a mess. And Touchberry's sitting there. I already checked him. He doesn't have any treasure. Let's go. Back in they go, and they follow the hall down to the fountain room where they, Touchberry now discovers what's happened. And here, this werewolf has transformed into a large barrel-chested man, not Ivalio, a large barrel-chested man whom they do recognize. This was one of the werewolves that had invaded Honeywood. This was the big guy they'd fought there who ran, right? Aha! Well, we finally got him. We finally got him. He is wearing much nicer clothes. The clothes of, perhaps a wealthy merchant or a low-ranking noble, maybe a knight or something. This guy had status. This guy had status. He also has around his neck a necklace. Ooh, we'll take that. It might be cursed. It might be cursed. I think this is Bob Johnny says this. That might be cursed. It's not. It's just treasure, but, you know, I thought, that's a good idea. I'm going to work that in somewhere. Anyway, they take the necklace, and, you know, kind of, what do we do with the bodies, right? You know, they stick the body in one corner, and I guess that's what we do, and they go through the door. Where were they? Anyone else in there? Weapons out. What they enter is essentially a barracks. Now, I only have 2 beds made in the Battlin Barrow style. Great video, very useful tutorial. I'll stick that below too. In they go, though. They find these 2 beds, and I say, as I lay it out, I say, look, these are often sarcophagi or burial slabs or, you know, just stairs or things. Today they're beds. Pretend they're all beds. Okay. These 2 actually seem to have bedclothes on them, and they seem to be used. The others have been stripped. They're just the bare mattress and frame. There's nothing else. Oh. So maybe these 2 are the only ones in here. But this can't be the headquarters. There's only 2 guys. Well, it was the headquarters. It was months ago. They have since moved on. These 2 are here. Well, you'll see why they're here. In the center of the room is a table with some dishes and things like that. On it, a bottle of wine. This is, you know, where they essentially have been living. And in the corner there is a chest. Ooh, check it for traps, faux fire. She does. She finds one. A poison needle, just by the hasp. There's one of those hasps that has to be moved, and it's a twist and lift kind of situation. So you can't just pop it with your sword or anything. It's a twist and lift situation. And just there, if you do that, a poison needle darts out on a spring and stab you. Okay, how are we going to get this thing? Can you remove traps? They do not want her to do this. Don't do it, don't do it. If you do this, you're going to get stabbed by it because you've got a 55% chance of success. You're going to fail. I don't know why they have no confidence in faux fire. She found the trap at the same odds. But anyway, so finally she says, no, I'm going to remove it. Let me do my job. So she rolls it up, and she, in fact, succeeds and is able to disarm the trap. They open the chest. It's empty. There's nothing in it. Nothing in it at all. Oh, maybe it's just here as a trap. Oh, maybe there's a false bottom. Maybe they do all this investigation. And then I say, maybe it was just left behind. Right? Maybe they took everything inside and left the chest. It is a room that can accommodate like 8 or 9 guys, and there were only 2 in here. Oh, yeah. Okay. There's another passage out that goes to the south, so they go through that. It winds a bit, checking for traps all the time. It winds a bit and comes to another door. All right, faux fire, check it for traps. She checks it for traps. She would have failed if there were any traps. There's no traps, though, so she doesn't find any. All right. Okay, let's see if we can open it. It is not locked. You can hear a little click as you pull the handle down, the lever down. You hear a click. It's open. And so Fleetwood says, I'm going to push it open with my foot, my sword and my dagger here. I'm going to be ready, right? He pushes it open with his foot, and it swings open. I say, you see nothing but darkness ahead of you. Now, this is a good time to mention that they are working with torches here, not lamp. Normally they have a lamp, which is a nice, dependable source of light. It's, you know, it's consistent because it's shuttered in there. It doesn't blow around too much, and they can set it down and things like that. They've been working with torches because, well, Touchberry poured the last of their oil on top of the water, so they don't have any more, right? This is where Fleetwood says, I'm going to cast my light spell. Touchberry, can I cast it on your shield? And he says, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And I say, just consider, if you cast it on the shield, what's going to happen? Think about a fight with the light on the shield. He goes to block, he's swinging, he's moving, the light is going all over the place, right? Think that one through first. Yeah, okay. Why don't I just cast it on the lantern? He pulls out his lantern, I'll just cast it on the lantern. Perfect. All right. Casts it on the lantern, and in they go.